What's up and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today we're checking out the new firmware for the standalone MPCs that just dropped. This is firmware 2.11 and it's not as mind-blowing or huge as the previous update was with whole new synths and all that, but it does have some cool stuff that I want to walk you through. And more importantly, Akai was nice enough to let me in on this a bit early and now I'm able to release this when the embargo lifts, so I'm sure as hell going to take advantage of it. All that being said, let's jump into it. So I've got this beat that I'm using for demonstration purposes. I actually filmed the entire process of making this from scratch. I flipped a piece of the Skyrim soundtrack, chopped it up, and made it into this lo-fi beat. That will be eventually appearing in its own dedicated video on my second channel, Beat Goblin. So I'll link that channel at the end of this video, but let's get into the specific stuff related to the update. So the stuff I'm the most excited about are the new effects that they've added and or updated. So let's start off with checking out flavor. And the big thing that I was really stoked about is the vinyl sim. So I've muted everything but the sample chop, and here it is without the flavor plugin. Let's add it. So we got this vinyl sim going. We can adjust the flutter, distortion, and the noise level. You can take this pretty far, or collapse it down to mono in varying degrees. I chose not to in this case. That's roughly where it was, I think. And in addition, we've got all these timbre selections. So it's simulating it coming out of something, like an amp, earbuds, a boombox. Gramophone's fun. That's kind of a vibe all on its own. There's a lot of different stuff to play with in here. I'm going to set this back to default now, and then you can also adjust the actual level of it. So then we add in our drums and our bass. And we've turned an RPG soundtrack into some nice lo-fi. I've also added this other track to demonstrate a few more things. So this is a key group program that I've added the other two effects to. So this is just a sample from my $5 sample pack, link in the description, and I've just applied a reverb to it. And this is sent to a key group program. We'll get back to sending samples to key group programs because there's another improvement that they've added that I really like. But let's check out these two effects. First of all, the Air Amp Sim. You've got a bunch of different like cab models that you can switch between and a bunch of presets built in as well. And of course, all the kind of standard stuff you'd expect. Mid frequency, treble. And now I've soloed this, and let's try out some other presets. And maybe get out a guitar drive and try some synth-specific stuff. That's nice. So there's quite a bit to play with here. This might not be the best sample to test an amp sim on, but it fits the track, and so I went for it. There's also a new and improved version of the Granulator, and I adore this. This is a lot like a delay, and you can choose how much it samples, and then how much it feeds back into itself, and then you can even do fun stuff like pitch those little grains up, which is what I've done here. So here's nothing at all. And there's all this control that you have. That's a bit much. It can really add some magic to a sound. I'm a big fan of this effect. There's even a randomizer. And you can even randomize the pitch. Sounds like a swarm of bees. Just get like a little warble in there. And the grain shape. So they've got more hard edges or more soft edges. That's a really nice effect. I really enjoy this. I'm going to be abusing the hell out of this for future tracks for sure. So, I mentioned there was another thing about key group programs that I wanted to show you. Let me go back to my drum track. And I've loaded this sound in onto a pad. They've added, as a workflow improvement, a way to just one click, I guess it's 2 clicks if you're on this main view, but 1 click turn a pad into a key group, which is real nice. Click this button, and it's done it. That's all it took. And if I go back to main, it's put it on the next available empty track. It's given it a name based on the sample, and I've already got one in here, so it even incremented it. That's just all taken care of in one step. That's super nice. While I have this pulled up, let me also show you another thing that pertains to both key groups and plugins. We now have 16 levels available for them, which is neat. So normally we're used to hitting shift and then notes, at least on the MPC One, to get to the note view, or you can also hit pad perform and get to it that way. But if I go to 16 levels and leave this active, for instance, now I can have velocity for whichever note I have selected. That's nice. We could even do stuff like filter level. Or attack, decay. There's all sorts of stuff in here. Even stuff like ratchet and probability. So you could directly record different probabilities. This is probably 100%. This is probably a pretty low percentage. You could record probabilities directly into the sequencer if you want to. And then I can just close that. And then we've got pad perform back on. I should also mention that you do have access to probabilities within the note editor as well, within grid. So if you bring this little tab up, you can go over to probability. So in this case, I've selected this octave up bass note, and I'm going to go to probability and then just yoink this down to, let's say, 50%. And then I'll just play this a couple of times. So it triggered at that time. Or it's 50%. And that's just built into the sequencer, which is neat. Also, on the note of plugins, you may notice they've added some stuff to the window for plugins. So now you can browse through a bunch of different stuff. You can browse through the key ranges that are recommended. You can build up set lists. You can favorite presets. You've got a bunch of stuff built right into here, which is neat. And once again, yet more ways to get to different views, which they really seem to be a fan of on these devices. And there's even a direct favorites button. It's nice. It's a nice little viewer. And you can also search for plugins and even change your program type just from this window, which is kind of neat. I hope that means that they're planning to institute like a bunch more plugins to the point that you're going to feel the need to search for them. We'll see. A couple other little improvements to mention. First of all, now if you go to pad perform, you've got the option for custom, and you can edit the note mapping. So choose your pads and then choose which notes those are mapped to. So in addition to doing a custom scale, you could even do stuff like have, say, these notes assigned to a lower octave and these notes assigned to a higher octave. So you could kind of split your keyboard like that. Very nice. And there's some more little improvements that I can go into. They added a few additional chord progressions under this progressions tab here, and they've given it better Ableton connectivity to be up to date. And also, I'm not sure if this was already there and I'm just not very observant, but now that I've used the Akai Force, check Monday's video, I'll link it at the end of this one, I noticed that it had a bit of a different saving system that gave you a bit more of an in-depth thing, and they've changed this to match. So if you click save now, you've got project save as, you've got all this kind of laid out nicely, and there's all this different stuff that you can choose to export from this one window. I should note though that just doing shift and then save directly saves the program without bringing this up, which is something that you should definitely know before you just willy-nilly start hitting save. But that does it for this update. Short but sweet. If you'd like to see my first experience with the Akai Force, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see a full MPC review, including coverage of the last major firmware update, you can click or tap up over here. And of course, be sure to subscribe to my second channel somewhere on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.